From about 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, Earth experienced the Pleistocene Epoch, a period when ice ages dominated the planet's climate and life. It was a harsh world, with massive ice sheets covering much of the northern hemisphere. Winter temperatures could drop below -30 degrees Celsius, while short summers only allowed the ice to retreat enough to reveal stretches of grassland, coniferous forest, and vast steppe. Seasonal temperature shifts were extreme, forcing both animals and humans into constant adaptation. Across these frozen plains, giant creatures, collectively known as megafauna, ruled. The woolly mammoth, Mammoths primigenius, over 3 meters tall and weighing up to 6 tons, carried a dense coat and a subcutaneous fat layer 8 centimeters thick, traveling in herds of dozens. The woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta antiquitatis, with horns over a meter long, could fend off any predator. The steppe bison, Bison priscus, weighing up to a ton, moved in herds of hundreds, becoming one of the most important sources of meat and hide. There were also giant deer, Megaloceros giganteus, whose antler span could reach nearly 4 meters, symbols of strength and formidable challenges for hunters. These animals played a central role in the Pleistocene ecosystem. By consuming vast amounts of grass and shrubs, they maintained the expansion of open steppe, creating habitats for smaller species. When they died, their carcasses fed scavengers and enriched the soil. Every movement they made influenced the entire food chain, from predators such as cave lions and dire wolves to humans. For humans of the time, megafauna were both an opportunity and a threat. A single adult mammoth could provide hundreds of kilograms of meat and fat for winter storage, along with hides and bones for tools, clothing, and shelter. But obtaining these resources meant facing a multi-ton animal capable of lethal counterattacks. A single swing of the trunk or thrust of a horn could kill instantly. Hunting megafauna required deep knowledge of the environment and the prey's behavior. Prehistoric humans observed seasonal migration routes, water sources, and moments of vulnerability, often in winter when food was scarce, or in spring when newborns appeared. Instead of direct confrontation, they exploited terrain, cliffs, swamps, icy slopes, to trap or drive prey into disadvantageous positions. This was the era when humans began developing large-scale hunting strategies, demanding close coordination among many members of a group. Picture a freezing morning. On a snow-covered ridge, the wind lashes at faces as a group of hunters stands silently. In the valley below, a herd of mammoths moves slowly, their breath rising in thick clouds. Each step sends tremors through the frozen ground. The hunters know that a single misplaced sound could alert the herd, sending them vanishing into the snow and wasting days of preparation. But if they succeed, the reward will be a stockpile of food, materials, and tools to see the growth through the brutal winter. This was the stage of the Age of Giants, a natural arena where humans and megafauna were both rivals and forces shaping each other's fate. In this relationship, even small changes could influence the survival of both. From this unforgiving environment emerged sophisticated hunting strategies, intense cooperation, and long-term planning, factors that would propel humanity further than any other species in Earth's history. Part 2. The Survival Challenge Against Beasts. Confronting megafauna during the Pleistocene was unlike any form of hunting imaginable to modern humans. Each species had physical traits that made it a moving fortress of power, and a single mistake could be fatal. Adult mammoths stood over 3 meters tall, weighed several tons, and could charge at more than 40 kilometers per hour. The woolly rhinoceros, with thick hide and a horn over a meter long, could pierce a human body in an instant. The massive steppe bison had shoulder muscles so powerful that a single charge or kick could shatter bones. Even animals, seemingly less dangerous, like the giant deer, could inflict deadly injuries if cornered. A physical comparison between humans and these beasts shows a near-total disadvantage. Prehistoric hunters averaged 1.6 to 1.7 meters in height, with far less raw muscle mass and strength. Their weapons, stone-tipped spears, thrown javelins, and later primitive bows, were only effective when striking weak points such as the neck, chest, or hind legs. In sheer physical power, humans could not match their prey. Their sole advantage lay in intelligence, environmental memory, and the ability to coordinate in groups. The risks in megafauna hunting were enormous. Injuries were often severe. Broken bones, internal trauma, rapid blood loss. A swing of a mammoth's trunk or a rhino's horn could hurl a hunter several meters. In the medical conditions of prehistory, such wounds were almost always fatal, if not immediately, then within days due to infection or immobility. Losing a single member not only reduced the hunting force, but also damaged morale and the group's survival chances. Harsh weather compounded the challenge. Snow and ice concealed tracks. Strong winds dispersed scent trails, making it harder to follow herds. Low temperatures reduced stamina and increased the risk of hypothermia, while frozen, slippery terrain made accidents more likely. In winter, prey often concentrated in lowland feeding areas, meaning hunters had to traverse treacherous terrain and risk encounters with other predators like cave lions or dire wolves. To overcome these obstacles, hunters had to understand migration patterns and species-specific behaviors. Mammoths traveled along almost fixed routes between feeding grounds, returning to the same spots at the same time each year. Woolly rhinos favored open steppe, avoided dense forests, and often moved alone or in pairs, creating ambush opportunities, but also making them quick to detect threats and flee. Steppe bison moved in large herds, forming defensive circles around calves when attacked, making them extremely dangerous unless the formation could be broken. Beyond tracking routes, hunters needed to assess the health and behavior of their prey. An old or injured mammoth moved more slowly and could be isolated from the herd. Likewise, during breeding season, some species became more aggressive and alert, forcing hunters to adapt strategies. Reading an animal's body language, from posture and movement to alarm calls, was a survival skill, often passed down through generations as a form of tribal knowledge. All these factors made megafauna hunting both a physical trial and a test of intellect and cooperation for prehistoric humans. Success depended not on brute strength, but on maximizing the one advantage humans had, the brain. In this harsh environment, people learned to observe keenly, predict the behavior of others, and work seamlessly in groups, skills that would continue to shape our evolutionary path. Part 3. Tactics of trapping, driving, and encirclement. To confront animals weighing several tons and far stronger than humans, Pleistocene hunters had to turn intelligence into their primary weapon. Hunting megafauna could not rely on individual strength. It was a process of meticulous preparation, exploitation of terrain, coordinated teamwork, and the exploitation of even the smallest weaknesses in the prey. Terrain traps were among the oldest and most effective tactics. Hunters used cliffs, ravines, marshes, or slippery slopes to channel prey in a chosen direction. Once a suitable location was identified, they dug deep pits, covered them with branches and leaves, or reinforced marsh edges with sharpened stakes to create lethal traps. In panic, mammoths or bison often stampeded in tight formation, unable to detect the danger, and once one animal was caught, the herd's formation could collapse. Archaeological sites have revealed large animal bones at the base of cliffs, evidence of humans driving prey over the edge for a swift kill. Persistence hunting took advantage of a unique human asset: greater endurance and better thermoregulation than most large warm-blooded animals. While megafauna had to rest to avoid overheating, Humans could maintain a steady pace for tens of kilometers, relentlessly pressing the prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. This was a dangerous, energy-draining tactic, but under the right conditions, such as in warm weather or when the prey was already wounded, it could bring down even the largest animals without direct confrontation. Group encirclement required a high degree of coordination. The hunting party split into multiple flanks, forming a tightening arc around the herd. Shouts, the clashing of stones, and smoke from torches or burning grass were used to cause panic, driving the animals toward a predetermined point. Flankers funneled the herd toward traps or the main killing party. With species like the steppe bison, whose instinct was to form a defensive circle around calves, breaking the formation was the key to getting close. With mammoths or woolly rhinos, the goal was to isolate a weak or lone individual to reduce the risk of a group counterattack. Weapons played a decisive supporting role. Thrown spears with stone points allowed attacks from safer distances than thrusting spears. Evidence from early periods shows that some groups used spear throwers, otlotls, to increase range and force. Primitive bows, appearing later, made it possible to shoot repeatedly and accurately from afar, especially targeting small weak points like the eyes or tendons. However, in most hunts, a killing blow still came from a thrusting spear once the prey was exhausted or immobilized in a trap. Task division within the group was tightly organized. The leader, often the most experienced hunter, was responsible for tracking and deciding when to strike. The rear drivers controlled the herd's movement to prevent escape. The trap blockers held key positions, lying in wait to deliver the decisive strike or trigger traps. Others generated noise, steered the herd's path, or protected the group from other predators that might appear. A typical mammoth hunt might unfold as follows. After days of tracking, the hunters spot a herd moving through a narrow valley. The terrain is ideal, cliffs on both sides, a springtime thaw turning the valley floor into mud ahead. They split into 3 groups, one to ambush in front, one to block from behind, and a third on the slopes to roll stones and create noise. At the signal, the rear group advances, shouting and hurling spears into the air to drive the herd forward. In panic, the mammoths charge into the muddy ground, their legs sinking deep. The main hunters move in, striking at the neck and flank until the animal is killed before it can break free. These tactics demanded not only strength and courage, but also calculation, foresight, and patience, qualities that allowed humans to rise from a vulnerable starting point to the apex of the food chain. Every successful hunt brought more than food and materials. It strengthened group bonds, passed skills and knowledge to the next generation, and laid the foundations for increasingly complex forms of social organization. Part 4. Changing the predator-prey relationship. For most of natural history before humans appeared, megafauna held an unchallenged position in their ecosystems. Adult mammoths, woolly rhinos, or steppe bison had virtually no true predators. Except for the old, injured, or newborn, they lived most of their lives in near complete safety. The top carnivores of the age, cave lions, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, only attacked when they had overwhelming advantage and rarely threatened healthy adults. The arrival of Homo sapiens completely rewrote this order. Intelligence, tool-making, and group organization allowed humans to do what almost no other species could: deliberately select targets, plan in advance, and coordinate to bring down the largest animals on Earth. For the first time in evolutionary history, megafauna became the intended quarry of a predator, rather than just the occasional target of opportunity. Direct attacks on top-tier species put unprecedented pressure on their populations, not only through the number killed, but also through disruptions in behavior and reproduction. Mammoth herds had to alter migration routes, avoiding former feeding grounds that had become ambush sites. Woolly rhinos and bison became more vigilant, spending more time on guard and less on feeding, which weakened them and reduced reproduction. One notable consequence was a shift in herd structure. The strongest adult leaders and protectors of the young were often prime hunting targets, offering the most meat and material. Removing these individuals left herds without guidance or defense, making calves more vulnerable to both humans and other predators. For humans, this marked a shift from avoiders to apex predators. Before this, Homo sapiens had to compete fiercely with other large carnivores and generally avoided direct conflict with megafauna. But as trapping, driving, and encirclement tactics became effective, humans not only secured a steady supply of meat, fat, and materials, but also gradually eliminated their greatest threats. Every successful hunt reinforced their role as the only species capable of influencing every level of the food chain. However, this rebalancing of power affected far more than just hunters and prey. It rippled through entire ecosystems. When a megafaunal species disappeared or declined sharply, vegetation and food chains shifted. For example, mammoths maintained the mammoth steppe by eating shrubs and trampling frozen soil, creating space for grasses. Without them, shrubs spread, altering the habitats of many other species. Likewise, the decline of steppe bison deprived many carnivores of a primary food source, forcing them to hunt smaller prey and triggering cascading population changes. These transformations didn't happen overnight, but accumulated over thousands of years, reshaping landscapes and biological structures across vast regions. In some cases, the disappearance of megafauna contributed to localized ecosystem collapse, in which entire food webs broke down and were replaced by new structures. Humans, likely without realizing it at the time, had become an ecological force as powerful as climate or geology. The predator-prey relationship of the Pleistocene, once governed purely by natural law, entered a new era. One side was no longer a muscle-bound predator, but a bipedal primate armed with strategy, weapons, and unmatched cooperation. From this point forward, no species, no matter how large, could ignore the presence of humans. Part 5. The Legacy of the Giant Hunters. The skills and strategies forged over tens of thousands of years of megafauna hunting did not vanish with the extinction of these giants. They were preserved, adapted, and woven into the culture, mindset, and even biology of humankind, forming a lasting legacy that remains today. Tactical, organizational, and cooperative skills are still evident in modern hunting cultures. Among many indigenous communities in North America, Siberia, and Africa, collective hunts still require role division. Leaders, drivers, blockers, much like their Pleistocene ancestors. The principles of exploiting terrain, using weather to advantage, and striking when prey is weakest remain foundational. Even with rifles, motor vehicles, and other modern tools, the underlying strategy, forcing prey into a disadvantage through coordinated action, has changed little since the days of mammoth hunting. The artistic record of the giant hunting era is spectacularly preserved in cave paintings. At Lascaux, France, Chauvet, France, and Altamira, Spain, mammoths, giant bison, and woolly rhinos are depicted in such detail that the artists must have observed them at close range. These paintings were more than decoration. They were a means of transmitting hunting knowledge, showing approach routes, movement patterns, and prey behavior. They also served as symbols, celebrating strength and achievement, and forging a shared identity within the group. In this way, Ice Age art functioned as both an information archive and a cultural glue. The psychological impact of the giant hunting era has also endured. The image of massive, awe-inspiring beasts became a central motif in myths, epics, and religious rituals. In some cultures, large game animals were revered as lords of the grasslands or masters of winter, embodiments of natural power that humans both conquered and respected. Folkloric monsters, from eastern dragons to western chimeras, may trace their roots to collective memories of the real giants that once roamed the earth. The evolutionary consequences of this period are impossible to overlook. Hunting dangerous, powerful prey required multi-step planning, complex coordination, and precise communication. Groups that mastered organization survived more often, passing down traits for intelligence, linguistic skill, and strategic thinking. The practice of sharing resources, distributing meat, hides, and bones after a kill, reinforced early social norms, laying the foundation for ideas of fairness and cooperation. In the modern world, echoes of the giant hunting legacy are still visible. Arctic seal hunts employ coordinated herding and containment tactics. In the military, principles like encirclement, cutting escape routes, and exploiting weaknesses directly parallel the strategies our ancestors used against megafauna. Rescue operations, wildfire containment, and even the management of sports teams rely on coordinated roles and mutual support rooted in collective hunting traditions. The objectives have changed, but the action framework still carries the strategic instinct shaped over tens of millennia. From fragile newcomers to nature's ultimate strategists, this journey is one of humanity's most important stories. At their origin, Homo sapiens had no claws, no speed, no brute force to match megafauna. Yet through learning, sharing experience, and refining cooperation, humans tipped the balance, bringing down creatures that once dominated entire landscapes, not only secured survival, but also built a mindset of confidence and agency in shaping the environment. That legacy lives not only in cultural memory, but also in our social structures, strategic behaviors, and even the way we frame challenges. Today, when facing new giants, climate crises, pandemics, global conflicts, we still draw on the same mindset that kept our ancestors alive. Observe, plan, coordinate, and persist until the goal is reached. The end of the giant hunting era was not a final chapter, but the starting point for a chain of cultural and biological evolution. From icy plains where hunters patiently drove mammoths into marshes, to modern cities running in synchronized systems, the principle remains: victory does not belong to the strongest, but to those who cooperate and plan best. That is the greatest inheritance the master hunters of the Pleistocene left us, a legacy of strategic intelligence, collective strength, and the belief that humans can shape their own destiny.